Welcome to another Saturday college football special here at Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. I'm your host, Matthew Reardon, and with me today is none other than Ed Smith.
Welcome, y'all.
And yes, you heard that right. It is Saturday already. And if you're like me and Ed, you know what that means. That's college football. It's the only time in the world that really matters. It's where it almost like the world stops because it is Saturday. It is time for college football. And this Saturday brings honestly a lot of joy to me as a fan, as it should to you. But this is one of the first Saturdays that we're really going to see how things are really going to start shaping out in conferences. This is becoming the main week that we will see that. We may see the dominoes fall. And well, one of the first matchups that we have to talk about here, and sorry to break it to you guys, but it's going to be the main event. We have to have this here. This needs to be the first point that we talk about because, well, it's why everyone's going to be tuning in this Saturday to watch all of this because it is Alabama and it is Georgia. These are two of the most marquee schools. It is a marquee matchup. You're talking about Muhammad Ali, you got the Lennox Lewis. This is a heavyweight matchup right here. George Foreman and I'm ecstatic about this because we saw this take place at the SEC championship game last year. It's like, wow, we're already getting another game with them already. Yes, we are. Yes, we are, and I'm here for it. Georgia coming off a dead week. This giving them some time to reflect after that Kentucky game. uh, they're going into Tuscaloosa. Alabama, on the other hand, is starting to look better than ever. And yes, we heard that correctly. Alabama's starting to look better. Well, yes, they are. They really are, in my opinion. And that's why this makes it such an interesting matchup because the SEC championship game last year, Georgia was the favorite. Alabama ended up winning. They snuck into the playoff because of that. And Georgia, even though they were the number one team all last year, they did not make the playoffs. They have a chip on their shoulder. They have a very big chip on their shoulder. And they were going to go into this game pretty much the odds on favorite. And they are right now the odds on favorite to win this game. But this is a point that I just really want to talk about quickly that cracks me up is with all these different betting apps everywhere now, the DraftKings, the FanDuels, ESPN Bet. So I'm going to talk about right now. They have it right now, Georgia Bulldogs, 2.5 points. And then you look at their ESPN analytics matchup predictor, and they got this way in favor of Alabama at 65.8%. The analytics, the nerds. What are they seeing? What are they seeing? Well, this is the one time I'm probably going to agree with them. They're seeing what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing a very, very talented Jalen Milroe play some of his best football. And Ed, I have to ask you this just right now. Is it just me, or does Alabama look like they should be a pretty decent favorite in this game because of how well they've played so far?
I think they should be a decent favorite, not only because of the offense that not only the way that they've played so far, but it's been explosive play after explosive play versus Georgia just kind of methodically plugging along. And it really does show up in the first half of ball games where Alabama at this point is typically scoring 25 points in the first half over the first four games that they played, and Georgia is at four. Yes, 4 points in the first half average. So Georgia just can't let Alabama get off to that thoroughbred, you know, Churchill down start, uh, like Secretariat or something, and try and play catch up in this game. Alabama, I think, should be the favorite, not only about how they're playing and the offense and these points I'm talking about, but the fact that it's in Tuscaloosa. That is a home field advantage that only one team has been able to truly break over the past few years, and that was Texas. So if you're going to say that Georgia is on Texas's level, they have to go in here and win this. But I don't think they will, because Alabama is proving that they are just as stout defensively as Georgia is, but they are more explosive and more efficient offensively. And that, I think, should give them the edge. And I don't understand how ESPN Bet is giving Georgia the nod, but then uh, turning around and basically saying otherwise when the nerds get involved.
Yeah. Well, what cracks me up about how Alabama's averaging 25 points a game in the first half is, did anyone watch the USF game? Alabama started out so slow and sluggish, yet they're still averaging 25 points a game in the first half. And that's a great comparison right there, is that first half against USF has been pretty much like Georgia's game against Kentucky. It seemed like they really couldn't get it going. Yes, they squeaked out a victory, but this is similar to what Georgia did against Missouri just a couple years ago too, where they almost lost. But they find ways to win because that's what champions do. So I do not want to count out Georgia by no means, but there was a game that took place just a couple years ago, and Ed's going to remember this all too well. But this kind of reminds me of when Alabama and Texas played their first time just a couple years ago, where on paper, Texas was, Texas looked like they were starting to really get this team back together. They were being led by young Quinn Ewers, whereas Alabama was being led by none other than Bryce Young. And on paper, you look at that, all right, which quarterback really stands out to you? And this is no disrespect to Quinn Ewers because we know the kind of quarterback he is, but it was Bryce Young that if there was going to be a play that was going to be made, it was going to be him that did that. And that's exactly what he did at the end of the game. I look at this and I see Jalen Milroe written all over this, that it's going to be him. He is the playmaker over Carson Beck that's really going to drive Alabama to win this game. And yes, their defense, they need to force Carson Beck to throw the ball more times in the game, because that's where I feel like they're going to struggle. That's a key victory right there, but nothing is more key, Ed, than I think the third down. You want to elaborate more on how important it is for third downs for both of these teams?
Well, part of the reason why Georgia lost the SEC championship game last year was they could not get Alabama off the field on third down. So those drives kept going, and Milroe was able to cash them in. Whereas on the other side, on the flip side for Georgia's offense, they could not sustain those drives. That was one of the biggest differences between them in that game just at the end of last year. So if you're looking at how these teams are faring right now when it comes to third down, Georgia is 74th in the country in third down conversions, and they're number one as far as opponent third down. So on defense, they're great. On offense, not so much. You know, but on the flip side, Alabama is in the top 15 of third down conversions on offense, and they are not so much on the defense. So whoever can control third down in this game, and to throw on top of that, think turnovers, because in my opinion, if Georgia has a shot at this, they need to score a touchdown on defense. They need to be able to go in there and get get the ball away from Jalen Milroe, whether it be third down or a turnover, especially in plus field position, so they do not have to sustain as long a drive to try and keep up on the scoreboard.
Yeah, this could easily be one of those games that the team that turns the ball over first is going to be the team that loses, because I expect this to be a slugfest as far as not the score, but these two teams duking it out. So it could be very close for a while. And so the team that turns it over first could very well be the team that loses. And just like you said earlier, Ed, and there's a great point, this is being taking place at Tuscaloosa. The Southeastern Conference, it is all about home field advantage. I mean, that's college in general, but definitely in the SEC. So that plays a very big importance to this game, is that this is being taken place in Alabama on their home turf. It's going to be a lot harder to win in that environment. So, I don't have a point prediction per se score wise, but if you couldn't tell, I am leaning towards Alabama winning this game. I just feel like the mojo is there for them at the right time in the right place. Keyword place, because this here is taking place over in Atlanta, Georgia, somewhere where it's a neutral site, but it favors Georgia. We'd be talking something a little different here. So that I have to go with Alabama here. And Ed has already pretty much said that he agrees too. But I think the really repercussions of this game, the fallout, is how important is it to win this game, because the loser of this game, they fall down, don't they, Ed?
They most certainly do. The fact that this game is happening because the SEC lost their divisions going into this season is massive, especially when you're talking about Texas as the number one team in the country. There's a lot of people talking about Tennessee possibly being the second best team in the SEC. Then you've got Georgia and Alabama, and let's not forget about Missouri. Yes, they went to overtime against Vanderbilt, but they still won. They're still undefeated. They still have a percentage chance to be undefeated at the end of this season. And you lose this game, you could be looking up at four different teams that you would have to leapfrog to get into the SEC title game. And that is a massive undertaking in this conference. So that is a huge, huge what if for whoever comes out of this game with an L. Now, I will say, absolutely, I am taking Alabama. And just one more point, talking about this game is Georgia left last season with two very explosive pass catchers, Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. They are gone. And on the flip side, Alabama has added an explosive pass catcher onto their team. So that will be something to watch out for in this game. Just I keep mentioning explosive plays. I think to beat Georgia, you've got to have those home run shots that get past that vaunted defensive line, that vaunted front seven, that group that is just going to smother you and lean on you. Alabama can do that, and I think they will.
Yeah. And for the sake of rambling, uh, I want you guys to kind of ponder this, think this over, and let us know what you feel in the comments. But uh, a quick scenario is, let's say Georgia loses this game. They still will face Texas. And imagine how that
Tennessee
is if,
and Ole
huh?
Miss and Tennessee
Yeah.
and Ole Miss.
So they do have chances to avenge this loss, just not against Alabama unless they face them in the SEC championship game. So to Ed's point, this is a big deal now that they dropped the divisions and that it's all one big giant conference now. It is something to really, really keep an eye on how this season plays out, because we've always known this. The SEC is the dominant conference in college football. So now that they have all these powerhouses in there that are all undefeated right now, something and someone's got to give. So I want to hear your guys' predictions right now. If you can, in the comments, let us know who you think is going to come out on top of this division 1 and 2. So, because there's chances that we could get multiple teams from the SEC in the college football playoffs now that it has expanded. But on to another marquee matchup. Yes, I said this was our main event, but that doesn't mean that the undercard can't be just as good. I've seen it happen plenty of times, and we are guaranteed to see that, I feel like, this week. This game is Louisville at Notre Dame. Notre Dame, yes, they probably feel like they should be undefeated right now. They aren't. We saw the loss against NIU. It was embarrassing. So they've had a chip on their shoulder to show that this was just a fluke that we lost like that. Well, you're facing off against a top 25 team in Louisville. This is a great game to watch, especially with transfer quarterback Tyler Shuck, who I know all about, being an Oregon Duck at one point, then going to Texas Tech and doing his thing down there. And now here he is at Louisville. Yes, he did suffer, an injury. Texas Tech, you never know how they're going to come back from injuries like that. But I still think he can really, really enforce his will on a football field. I truly do believe that. And Louisville is a very sneaky team. We've seen them really sneak up over the years within the ACC. And yes, Notre Dame, this is not a conference matchup, but come on, let's be real. Notre Dame, join a conference. If you're going to, you might as well just do the ACC because I feel like that's where you really belong. So I feel like this matchup here is where this is like a conference matchup, right, Ed? Is that kind of how you would feel with this?
Yeah, considering that Notre Dame is an ACC affiliate for every other sport except football,
Yeah.
and the only reason why they're not, well, it's two reasons. One, the stodgy old uh, administration thinks that they're better than everybody else when they haven't, sniffed an actual win in a national title contention uh, since 1988 and 35 years, 36 years at this point. So there's that. But then you've got the TV rights deal that they have with NBC and Peacock,
Yeah.
and they don't want to give up that revenue that is all to themselves. And I don't blame them for that part, but they can't then go and cry wolf about not getting consideration for a playoff spot or a marquee bowl matchup because they're losing to teams that they shouldn't lose to if they are really serious about being a marquee program.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they need to be. I mean, they need to take those steps to be taken serious. But Louisville, they're averaging 40 points a game. They really are showing up on offense, really when it matters. And Marcus Freeman, ever since he took the head coaching job, you really want to see that consistency from him. I know Notre Dame does, but himself, he wants to see that consistency. And this is going to be a tough game. I really feel like this is going to be tougher for Notre Dame than people are really making it seem. Louisville, 471 yards a game they're averaging. They're getting enough on the passing and then on running as well. When you have a quarterback like that who can run too, I just really feel like it's going to be tough for Notre Dame to really stop here. But Riley Leonard, do you feel like he's going to be the big X factor in this game to how this game's really going to turn?
He is truly an X factor in this because one of the biggest keys for Louisville is to control Riley Leonard. In just 4 games this year at Notre Dame, he's only 30 yards short of his rushing total from the 7 games before he got hurt last year while he was at Duke. He has been truly a the running threat, the dual threat that we thought he was going to be coming to Notre Dame, which was way more than Captain Handsome that they had last year. So uh, Riley Leonard is an X factor in this. But one point that I want to make here is Notre Dame is giving up 100 yards more per game than what Louisville is. So you take the fact that Louisville is gaining over 60 yards a game more than what Notre Dame is doing, and Notre Dame's giving up 100 yards more per game than what Louisville is doing. That is a recipe for disaster for Notre Dame at this point. Notre Dame is a full touchdown less per game in point in point total than what Louisville is doing, everything just seems to be tilting, and I don't quite understand why there is such a push to have Notre Dame be a touchdown favorite when everything on the page is telling me that Louisville should be the the consensus favorite of this game, or at least a toss up. I mean, make it something that makes sense. I realize betting is based upon the people that bet, but my goodness,
Yeah.
to then turn around and give a 2-1 favorite to Notre Dame over Louisville after everything that we just had talked about, I don't understand it.
I don't either. I mean, you could sit here and say, well, maybe it's being because it's taking place over in South Bend. Yes, like I mentioned, home field advantage is important in college football. It does play a factor, but I don't feel like it plays this much of a factor of how much they are giving the credit to Notre Dame, especially considering the points that we just made. It just on paper, it doesn't seem like it, but the bettors are seeing something that we're not seeing possibly, or maybe the nerds at this point are seeing something that we're not seeing because it sure as heck seems like Louisville should win this game, but maybe it's because of the coaching. Maybe they really truly believe in Marcus Freeman that he'll be the guy that leads this team. I don't think so, but maybe, like I said, they may see something that we don't see. But as of right now, Notre Dame is the favorite, and I'm really looking forward to this game. I want to tune into this game to see if we're right or if we're wrong. But I gotta lean with Louisville at this point. It just everything that they've proven so far. They're 3-0, and they do have a proven track record so far. 3 games into this year.
Absolutely. And their head coach is proving that last year wasn't can bring a team together to play good football and compete with the ACC because everybody wants to talk about Miami, but here Louisville is right on the cusp of being right there with Miami, and there's nothing saying that they can't at least meet up at some point in the ACC title game. And that would be the second consecutive year that Louisville is in the ACC title game. Whereas, where was Miami last year? They weren't even a discussion.
Nope.
So, why is this program not getting the respect that it deserves at this point?
They're just I don't know. They should be. That's what they should be. So and that's their point. So that's why I also think that they're going to win this game because I think they want to continue to prove and hammer this point. Hey, here we are. We're right here still, and we're not backing down no matter what giants you put in front of us. So
Absolutely.
they got to give them that credit. But uh, last but not least, right now is and the game that we are going to have our eye on. We think that you should too. That is Oklahoma State at Kansas State. This is Big 12 football right here. And I couldn't be any more excited to actually see how this game folds out. Yeah, it's going to be, well, it should be a running type of matchup, but that hasn't been the case for who we thought, is the number one running back in the country this year, coming into this year in Ollie Gordon. He hasn't really shown as that much of what we saw last year and what we know he's capable of. Who has shown that they can run the ball? That's Avery Johnson. That's the quarterback for Kansas State. What he is doing is crazy. It honestly is. He's using his legs. He's extending plays. And what Kansas State did against Arizona just a couple weeks back, I thought was impressive. Yes, it was at home, but I was impressed with this Kansas State team and watching Avery Johnson at quarterback. It is kind of like watching Lamar Jackson at Louisville at quarterback. He can extend the plays. He uses his legs. It was very fun to watch. On the other end, Oklahoma State and their quarterback Tyler Bowman, guy's balling out. The guy is throwing the rock right now. And we didn't quite fully expect that considering who they had in the backfield and Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon last year put up 1,700 yards on the ground. So far this year, only 236 yards. That's not up to his standards, and he knows that. And he's pissed off, I'm sure. It's when you know that you have so much more potential than what you're putting out, it's gonna piss you off. So I expect Ollie Gordon actually to have a big game this game because you know he's gonna have his typical breakout game, and you know when that happens in conference matchup. Here it is right now. You got a conference matchup in front of you against Kansas State. I expect some fireworks there in the Oklahoma State backfield just as much as I expect fireworks from Avery Johnson at quarterback. Ed?
Yeah, when we got into this season, if you would have told me that after 4 games, Ollie Gordon would have fewer rushing yards than Avery Johnson,
Yeah.
that is wild to
Yeah.
me at this point. So, I, Kansas State is coming off of, quite frankly, an embarrassment of a game against BYU last week. They're back at home where they're comfortable. Avery Johnson, that was his first road start as the leader of this team. So I give him some grace on that one. But he cannot put himself in a position to where to lose this game for Kansas State. He's got to be able to go out and win it. However, on the flip side, Oklahoma State, they have been uh, quite potent themselves and have won some good ball games against quality opponents and played some quality opponents up to this point. So this to me feels like a toss up. Even though Kansas State is favored by 5, I don't think home field advantage gives you 5 points. But I I don't quite understand it. This is another situation in which the nerds have it flipped, where the analytics say that Oklahoma State should win. And to me, this game is so much of a toss up that I can understand both sides of that because Kansas State is quite formidable at Bill Snyder Stadium. Uh, but Oklahoma State, it's hard to bet against Mike Gundy any year. The mullet man, yes, the mullet man. Do you know the mullet man? I know the mullet man. He knows how to coach. He is one of the most underrated coaches in college football, in my opinion, because while Oklahoma State has never been would never be confused for the Oklahoma Sooners, they have been a quality program under Mike Gundy, and he puts that team together year in, year out, and been there a very long time, ever since he was 40, as we all know. So I gosh, it's such a hard uh, pick for me on this one, but I think Kansas State ekes it out. That home field, that comfortability of being at home. I'm a big fan of Chris Kleinman uh, as the coach of Kansas State, so I've got to I've got to think that he puts together a game plan that puts uh, uh, DJ Giddens and Avery Johnson in great position to be successful. It's just it's so close, but I'm gonna have to go Kansas State on this one.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe one thing that the nerds are seeing that maybe just pops out to them is the fact that Kansas State, I mean, they're giving up 485 total yards a game. And Oklahoma State, on the other hand, they're putting up 410 yards a game. They're giving up almost 100 yards less with 352 yards a game. But with Tyler Bowman averaging about 300 yards a game, which is great in college, and have Ollie Gordon in the backfield who should be putting up more numbers than he is, the fact that Kansas State's given up that much, if Oklahoma State could really do that and show what they can do on offense, I don't see why. I could actually agree with what the nerds have here with having Oklahoma State winning this game, but I just think that those need to happen. If they don't, then yes, Kansas State being at home with Avery Johnson can and should win this game. So I think it's just the ultimate question mark. This is a toss up. This is, for me, like a 50-50 game right here that it's hard to predict. Yes, heads or tails at this point, because it's all the what ifs right now, the intangibles that we just don't know until it actually happens. But my gut is telling me that Ollie Gordon has a big game this game, so I'm gonna have to go with Oklahoma State, going on the road, pull off this upset, and really get the ball rolling again with Ollie Gordon, because we know he can do that. The whole country can, and this may be the game that really breaks out for him. So I'm just going to go with my gut on this one and go with Oklahoma State. But this is a flip of a coin right here. But you have to keep your eye on Avery Johnson. You have to keep your eye on Ollie Gordon, running back for Oklahoma State. And of course, Tyler Bowman for quarterback at Oklahoma State, and DJ Giddens for Kansas State. So there are a lot of people keeping an eye on. So we will see really what happens, Ed, because this is another heavyweight matchup, in my opinion. So
Yeah, it may not get the national attention of in Alabama and Georgia, but if you are really deep into Big 12 conference, then this is one of the games that you have had circled on your calendar since the schedules came out.
yeah. And I hate to break it to you, Colorado, but this may be the game that really actually kind of solves who wins the Big 12, or is number one at the end of this year, because, well, these are two of the top teams right now. Sorry, not you, Colorado. You're not going to be up there, but this could be a rematch to come later on with these two programs. So it's another reason to keep an eye out on this. So I love conference play. I love once it is actually really going, because you are going to see some of the best football. It's not you're playing some Bishop Sycamore opponent. You're actually playing an in conference rival that wants nothing but to beat the life out of you, pretty much. So that's what we're going to see in these three games, coming from starting with Georgia and Alabama, to gosh, who we're talking about, Notre Dame and Louisville, and then of course lastly Kansas State and Oklahoma State. So you don't want to miss out on those three games. I could assure you that they will keep you entertained, and they're going to keep us entertained. I know that for sure. So if there's other games that you want us to keep an eye out on, let us know in the comment section. Because whether it's big or small, there's always plenty of games to really keep an eye out on, and it controls the landscape of those conferences in college football. So let us know, and please continue to hit that like and subscribe button and share these videos. We hope that you enjoy our Saturday specials that we got going for you today, and all of our other shows that we do. But until next time, guys, we are rounding third, and we are headed for home.